5 things emotionally aware people do, usually without realizing it. Most people think that emotional awareness is something you learn or have to learn through therapy or books or years of self reflection. And yes, emotional awareness can absolutely be sharpened in some settings. But in practice, emotionally aware people don't usually feel like they're doing anything special. They don't walk around thinking, I'm emotionally intelligent. In fact, a lot of them don't even realize the way that they move through the world is different. What they do differently tends to be quiet, automatic, and almost boring. So, this video isn't about self improvement tips. It's about learning to recognize these patterns and subtle behaviors that emotionally aware people tend to do without even trying. And if you recognize yourself in some or all of these things, it doesn't mean you're better, not necessarily. It just means that you've mastered implementing a few things that you've probably learned the hard way. Number one, they pause before reacting, even when they don't look calm. Emotionally aware people still feel anger, they still feel hurt, they still feel defensive. The difference is timing. There's a small gap between feeling the feeling and their response. Sometimes that pause is more obvious, like a silence or a breath, or just completely walking away from a situation. But sometimes it's invisible, a slight delay before replying, or a softened tone, even, or simply a sentence they decide not to say. And here's the important part, that pause isn't necessarily willpower, it's pattern recognition. Because at some point they learned that immediate reactions usually cost more than they're worth. So their system will always default to checking first. And that's not to suppress emotion, but to stop emotion from choosing the outcome they give or the response they give. Number two, they don't take every feeling at face value. Emotionally aware people don't assume that every emotion is fact. If they feel anxious, they don't immediately conclude that something is wrong. If they feel irritated, they don't automatically decide that someone has crossed a line or annoyed them somehow. If they feel low, they don't push or rush to explain it always as a failure. They ask quieter questions instead, like, is this emotion about now or something that might have happened earlier? Is the feeling I'm feeling situationally proportional? Or maybe is it familiar? Is this feeling mine? Or maybe just something I absorbed from someone else? That doesn't mean they ignore their feelings. It just means they don't confuse intensity with accuracy. Emotion simply becomes information, not instruction. Number three, they notice patterns faster than they judge them. One of the biggest tells of emotional awareness, I think, is how quickly someone recognizes repetition. Not even just in others now, but in themselves too. They'll notice things like, I always shut down after this kind of conversation. Or I get defensive when I feel misunderstood. Or maybe it's something deeper, like I always withdraw right before I ask for help because I don't want to show that I don't know how to do something. And here's the key difference, they notice the pattern before they moralize it. So instead of why am I thinking this, it becomes this again. Because once behavior stops being a personal flaw, it starts being a pattern, and change becomes practical instead of emotional. Number four, they regulate privately instead of performing regulation. Emotionally aware people don't usually regulate themselves in front of an audience because they don't need to prove their composure. They don't make a point of handling things well. They don't announce growth. They step away. They ground themselves. They let their own nervous system settle off stage. Sometimes it's a private breath, or sometimes it's disappearing for a night. Sometimes it's even a stretch of time where they disappear completely, just enough to reset. They don't improvise regulation. They return to methods they've proven to themselves that work. And when they re enter the situation, minutes, hours, days, weeks, or months, they do so quieter, steadier, and without announcing the effort it took them to get back to that place. It's not emotional detachment, it's containment. They understand something subtle about themselves, that not every feeling needs to be shared in real time to be valid. They validate themselves. Number 5, they choose their battles carefully and with surprising restraint. Emotionally aware people could often, most often even, argue more than they actually do. They notice inconsistencies, they see subtle subtexts, they catch emotional undercurrents quickly. But they also ask a different question before engaging. Is this worth my energy? Not am I right? Not should I correct this? But what does this cost me if I engage? That's why they'll sometimes let things slide that others would fight over. Not because they don't care, not because they're wrong, but because they care selectively. Their energy, or energy in general, is treated as a finite resource, and they watch where they spend it. What all of this actually points to is that emotional awareness isn't about being calm or kind or endlessly patient. It's about understanding yourself and self trust, trusting that you don't need to react immediately to feel that feeling of safety, trusting that emotions can pass without being obeyed, trusting that not every moment needs to be fixed or explained or defended. Most people develop this emotional awareness after like burnouts or loss or long periods of internal friction. That's not through theory, but through the experience finally teaching the lesson that force never could. So if some of these points feel familiar to you, it means that you've spent enough time paying attention to what actually costs you. Emotional awareness, by near definition, doesn't announce itself, and it never will. It mostly shows up in what you don't do anymore, not what you do. And once you notice that, once you start moving through your life with less resistance, it's not because life got easier, but because you decided to stop fighting against the wrong moments. My name is John. You're welcome to be here, and you're more than welcome to stay here.